All right, good evening, all. The Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of October 9, 2024 is now called to order. I'll begin with the roll call. As I say your name, please indicate your presence by saying here. Vice Chair Thomas?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Burnett?
Here.
Commissioner Hanson?
Here.
And I am here as well. I will have the honor of leading us in the pledge tonight, so please stand. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As the Planning Commission conducts the meeting this evening, we encourage active participation by the public, which is essential to the important work of the Planning Commission. Public input is very much welcomed and is always considered. During our meeting, there are two opportunities for members of the public to participate. During the verbal communications period, an individual may speak on any topic that is not on the agenda for tonight's meeting. And during the hearing tonight on any agenda item, any member of the public may speak about that item. You will be advised of the times when you speak on these items. If you wish to address the Commission tonight during either the verbal communications time or when we consider an agenda item, please raise your hand in the Zoom app, or for those here in person, complete a speaker card located in front of you and turn the card over to a staff member. Please print your name clearly, or if you are speaking anonymously, just write down your initials. When you speak, I ask that you come up to the microphone and speak directly into it. This is important because this meeting is being recorded. Also, when you are called to speak, please state your name and address for the record, or indicate that you are speaking anonymously. In fairness to all who wish to speak at this meeting, it is necessary that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. So we'll begin tonight with the verbal communications portion of our meeting, during when members of the public are invited to address the Commission on any matters which are not on the agenda. Staff will announce when your 3-minute time limit is up. We have a member of the audience, but I have no speaker cards present. Is there anybody present in the chambers who wish to speak during verbal communications? Seeing none, do we have anybody on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Thank you so much. I would actually like to take the opportunity at this point to make one verbal communication to the public and to my fellow commissioners to announce that Mr. Mullen has been selected as the town's new planning manager. So Mr. Mullen has, of course, served this town for many years, and I've known Sean as both part of the HPC and Planning Commission. So on behalf of my fellow commissioners, congratulations. All right, then we'll move to the consent calendar. Tonight we have one item on the consent calendar, being the approval of minutes of our meeting on July 24, 2024. Before the Planning Commission acts on the consent calendar, any member of the commission may request that this item be removed. Are there any such requests tonight? All right, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented? Yes, Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I move to approve the minutes of our meeting of July 24, 2024.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that motion? Yes, Commissioner Hanson.
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I have a motion and a second. By a show of hands, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate. And those opposed? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Burnett. Very good. The vote is 4 in favor and 1 abstention. The motion passes. Thank you so much. Then there is no matter under our public hearings portion of our calendar. Rather, our one item is under the other business category, and that is the consideration and recommendation to the Town Council on adoption of the draft sign ordinance, Town Code Amendment Application A-24-004. Project location is townwide. The applicant is the Town of Los Gatos. I believe our staff report will be presented by our town attorney.
Thank you, Commissioners. Gabrielle Whelan, Town Attorney. So this item follows on earlier consideration of the sign ordinance in May of this year. As the Commission will remember, the goal in May was to remove any content-based regulations from the ordinance based on a Supreme Court decision that overturned content-based regulations. And as you'll probably also recall, content-based regulations are regulations that require a person to read a sign in order to determine whether or not it's prohibited. Over the summer, we had several code enforcement matters that made it clear that the ordinance should be clarified in a few respects. And so I've drafted those proposed clarifications for the Planning Commission or consideration tonight. And if the Planning Commission approves of those revisions, they'll be presented to the Town Council at an upcoming meeting. And so I have a brief PowerPoint slide that goes through the 4 changes that are proposed. And so we'll start with the first slide. And so that's talking about the need to remove the content-based regulations in May. And then the next slide, please. So the first revision has to do with temporary signs at intersections. One of the changes in May was to remove a specific reference to real estate signs, because that would be a content-based regulation. And instead, the town regulates temporary signs at intersections. And it's come to staff's attention that most real estate signs are larger than 1 square foot in size. And the most common size appears to be 2 square feet. And so staff is proposing to revise Section 2910, 110, 5B to allow temporary signage that's 2 square feet at intersections. And then, are there any questions on that proposed change? Yes.
Since you said real estate, don't you have to strike the word real estate? In the
Yes, and so in the top portion, my intention was to give an example of the most common type of temporary sign, and I'm not seeing a reference to real estate signs.
it's not in the code. It's not
text.
in the code itself.
Okay.
Okay. It's just in the explanation. Okay.
Yeah, I was just giving an example of the most common one. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so then we're ready for the next slide. There's a section that prohibits, it's titled posters in the public right-of-way. And I think it was intended to get at like event posters that are put on benches and street poles. But I think that it would be clear to broaden the description to all signage. And so the recommendation is to replace a heading that's currently called posters with a heading that says signs, so that it's clear that this prohibition relates to all signage placed on objects in the public right-of-way. Are there any questions on that proposed change? Yes.
When I first read over this, I noticed that if it's something placed onto something else and no freestanding, is the freestanding covered by the other language, like a couple of?
Exactly.
It's like in 10 or something, it's 2 down.
Exactly.
So, okay.
It used to be sort of mixed in different subsections. And so one of the proposals tonight is to put the prohibition on freestanding signage in its own subsection.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay. Next slide. Okay. And then we have a subsection that is talking about what type of temporary signage is allowed in the public right-of-way. And so we used to have a section that talked about pavement, and that was in the earlier subsection 8 that we were just looking at. And so the proposal is to revise this to say that temporary signs is not permitted anywhere in the public right-of-way. And then also to prohibit temporary signage on public property. Any questions on that proposed change? Okay. Next slide, please. And then this is the subsection I was talking about earlier. And it used to say that temporary signs are not permitted on sidewalks or in the section of the road between the sidewalk, the grassy medians between the road and the sidewalk. And so the intent of this edit is to put all the restrictions that relate to right-of-way all in the same subsection. Are there any questions on this proposed change? Okay. And
Excuse me, I have a
then,
question.
yes,
Would enforcement be by the police department?
So that's a good question. So currently, the sign ordinance is enforced by the town's code compliance officer. And the first step is issuance of an administrative citation. And for a first violation, the amount of the fine is $100. For the second citation, it's $250, and for the third, it's $500. And then we did just put in place a new collection mechanism. The town has recently been accepted into the Franchise Tax Board's Interceptor program, and pursuant to that program, if there's an unpaid citation, it can be deducted from a person's income tax refund. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much for that and for the slides. I found those very helpful. Commissioners, any questions for staff other than those that have already been raised? All right, seeing none, I will open the discussion to members of the public who have questions or comments on these proposed changes. I don't have any yellow cards, and seeing none presented in chambers, do we have anybody on Zoom?
We do not.
Thank you very much. Well, then I will close the public portion of this matter and then open discussion to my commissioners to discuss, make comments, and/or make a motion on this matter. Commissioners. Commissioner Hanson.
This seems perfectly reasonable to me. I mean, we had seen this before, and these are just tweaks to provide clarification, and it makes a lot of sense. And I especially appreciated Ms. Whelan's additional commentary that was beyond what was in the staff report to give more color to it.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioners?
I share that sentiment.
Very good. I sense we're all on the same page. Can I ask a commissioner to make a motion? Vice Chair?
I move to, sorry, what is this? Okay. I move to make recommendation to the town council on the adoption of the draft revised sign ordinance as outlined in Exhibit 2 with the changes highlighted in Exhibit 1.
Very good. Do you need any findings, or is that adequate for our purposes?
No, we do not need findings. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for that motion. Do I have a second? Commissioner Hanson.
I second the motion.
Thank you. I have a first and second. Any questions or comments, commissioners? Then by a show of hands, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Then that closes our, oh, I'm sorry, are there, I guess because it's a recommendation, there are no appeal rights, correct? Thank you. That closes the public portion of our agenda for this evening. Mr. Mullen, will you be presenting a report from the Community Development Department?
Yes, thank you and good evening. At its meeting of August 6th, the Town Council provided direction to staff to prepare an RFP for the development of additional objective design standards related to high-quality building design, architectural style, and height transitions. That RFP has been released and has a closing date of October 27th. And lastly, town staff continues to work on the implementation programs included in the housing element and anticipates that several items, including changes to the town code, will be forwarded to the Planning Commission at upcoming meetings. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. And just for purposes of our scheduling, I'd like to confirm, is it our understanding that the remainder of our scheduled meetings for Planning Commission will occur between now and the end of the year?
It appears so, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Very good. Thank you for that report. Yes, Commissioner Burnett.
Yeah, Mr. Mullen, for the objective standards that the consultant will work on, does that relate to residential, commercial, and mixed use?
They would be focused on mixed use and multifamily residential. There is going to be some focus, as directed by the council, on small unit multifamily developments, but we're not looking at developments beyond that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? No. Then, in addition to their terms as planning commissioners, each commissioner also serves on a committee or subcommittee, which meets from time to time. My understanding is that since our last Planning Commission meeting, only the Historic Preservation Committee has met. And if so, can I get a report from that subcommittee?
Thank you. On September 12th, we had 6 items. September 12th, we had a Historic Preservation Committee meeting. There were 6 items. 145 Tate, proposal for a second-story addition. The committee continued the item and provided direction to the applicant. Second was 15116 Blossom Hill Road. The Historic Preservation Committee approved removal of the property from the Historic Resources Inventory. Third, we had 134 Hernandez Avenue, a proposal for a second-story addition. The committee recommended approval with direction. The fourth item was 14344 La Rinconada Drive. There was a preliminary review of an addition. The committee approved feedback, provided feedback to the applicant. And then 311 Johnson Avenue, there was preliminary review of a second-story addition, and the committee again provided feedback to the applicant. And then 128 University Avenue, the item was withdrawn at the applicant's request and not discussed. And then we had an additional meeting on September 25th. The first was 200 Hernandez, and this item was continued by the applicant. And then 14340 Browns Lane, recommendation approval to the director to remove from the historic inventory. And then we had 228 Bachman, a recommendation to director to remain as a contributor to the historic district. And then 145 Tate Avenue, we denied a request for recommendation upholding the committee's September 11th action to continue the item with direction to the applicant. And that concludes my 2 reports. Thank you.
Thank you for the report, and thank you, HPC. I know you've been busy, so thanks for your efforts. Well, that concludes tonight's evenings. I wish to thank my fellow commissioners, our staff, our new planning manager, and town attorney. Thank you for your very thorough report this evening. So to all participants, thank you for your efforts, and good evening. The meeting is adjourned.
Possibly a record.